佢哋開到 overrun 晒啊！我哋夠鐘又夠法定人數，我哋請嗰啲即係申訴嘅團體入嚟。
Please invite the deputations to join us.
38個，我哋有幾多時間？每日3分鐘，3分鐘最終剩翻幾多？3分鐘，因為上次都係3分鐘咁，於是同人。38，咁就最終係剩翻幾分鐘？38個。等下先啊！我哋會有幾分鐘？我哋個會今日 extend 咗有2個半鐘頭，即係6。150，咁就38個團體啊嘛，38乘以3，114減150分鐘，有半個鐘俾大家瞓。好，請大家入嚟嘅代表請就座。
Please be seated. Please take the seat with the name tag showing your organization. Good morning.
係啊，跟個名坐，跟個名個座位坐。
Look for the name of your organization.
早晨，早晨。早晨。
Good morning.
Often chairman brief 係啦，早晨。好，各位委員，我哋咧
Members.
各位委員，我哋咧就
Members. On the 16th of December, we had our last meeting. We received 30 deputations from the proprietary Chinese medicines tray. We talk about GMP, the quality control. We have 2 hearings because of the sheer number of deputations. Originally, we would receive 40 deputations today. 2 have told us that they are not able to come, and now we have 38. Please refer to the list. All deputations are reminded that you can wear the earpiece for reception of the audio feed. Channel 0 is floor, Channel 1 Cantonese, Channel 2 English, Channel 3 Wo Tong Pharmaceutical Ltd. Every deputation or individual would be given 3 minutes. When your time is up, the alarm will sound. But of course, I will allow you to wrap up. But if you have got quite a lot to go, please do so. Please submit your written submissions in due course. Please be reminded that your speeches are not protected by the Electrical Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So that has to say that no protection is offered for your speeches under the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance, and all those in the public gallery and all deputations and individuals should behave orderly in an orderly manner. And today, from the official side, we have Under Secretary Professor Sophia Chan, Ms. Janice Chia, Deputy Secretary, and Dr. Ronald Lam, the Assistant Director, and Dr. Alice Wong, also from the DOH. And let me now invite the deputations to speak. First one is Mr. Choi Kam Chin, President of Hong Kong Society of Chinese Medicine Limited. Good morning. I represent a concerned group on the development of Chinese medicine. Last year, we conducted a questionnaire survey, and I would like to highlight the findings. First question raised is that in the difficulties encountered in applying for a license. And the first one, the inspectors told different things. They found it difficult to cope. And then there was no systemic support provided for the trade. And so their understanding of the system is very limited. And the license is valid for 2 years. So after 1.5 years, they will have to get the license renewed. The respondents thought this is too tight. 70% of them thought the license should be valid for 3 to 5 years. And the third questions: if Chinese medicine is manufactured not for export, but only for display and exhibition in Hong Kong. And then there's another question inviting comments on the current system on Chinese medicine. 90% of them would like to see a review and modification of the current measures and systems. And also there's another question on the difficulties encountered in introducing GMP. 60% of them said that it would be difficult given the space constraint in Hong Kong. 55% of them said that the personnel requirement is such that they cannot really get sufficient number of qualified people. And also that there's a question on how the government should tie in with the introduction of GMP. 50% said there should be a discussion with the trade on how to implement GMP. And it should only be commence after a consensus has been reached with the trade. And 50% of them said we should bear in mind that Hong Kong's interests should come first, and we should allow the industries in Hong Kong to continue. And when asked whether they would introduce GMP, 55% said they would not, and they would just keep on selling their products as long as they can. We also asked a question about the awareness of Chinese Medicine Board. And only 11% are aware of the council, and most of them would like to see communication improved. I hope through the provision of the information gathered, we can promote communication between the trade and the company. Next, Mr. Wo Mao. I want to make 3 points in respect of Chinese medicine. At present, the definition of Chinese proprietary medicine is problematic. We should change the definition in the law to facilitate the development of trade. Because at present, the definition is there to facilitate monitoring and supervision by the authority. The authority just go for convenience. They would they just adopt the modern herbology and medicinal concepts. They did not consider the special features of Chinese proprietary medicines, and they did not pay attention to the fact that Chinese proprietary medicine is traditional medicine, and also sometimes it can be in the form of a dietary supplement. And they blindly pursued a standard similar to that for Western medicines. In the past decade or so, the trade worked tirelessly to try to comply, and it was all a waste. And the definition of Chinese proprietary medicine is not based on the theory of Chinese medicine. Without this adoption of Chinese medicine concept, how can we have a proper monetary system? Therefore, we are of the view that the law must be reviewed and amended. Because of the unsatisfactory law on the regulation of proprietary Chinese medicines, the authority is not doing a good job in supervision, and those under the system are unhappy. We cannot just look at the individual ingredients in deciding the efficacy or in assessing the efficacy. If the administration still look at the active ingredient of proprietary Chinese medicines, very much like we would do for Western medicines, this is a wrong concept, because the Chinese medicines and the material would have different qualities and levels of efficacy based on the quality, the place of origin, or the season of harvesting. We must improve quality at source, so that we make sure that material for proprietary Chinese medicines can be improved. But Hong Kong itself would be helpless in doing it, in going along. It's really an illusion trying to regulate quality on the side, on our side, on the side of Hong Kong. There must be a full review of the law, so as to facilitate the future development of the sector. We would like to see a revision to the definition of a proprietary Chinese medicine in the Chinese Medicine Ordinance, so that we can tie in with the special features and characteristics of Chinese medicines. And before the review is conducted, there should be closer communication, and there should be further review into the GMP-related regulatory requirements, and there should be also a proper transitional arrangement so that the trade can take steps to tie in, and also to make suitable arrangements for those manufacturers who cannot cope with this new system. Well, actually, I have provided a written submission. I just want to highlight some points. For example, number 4. Actually, the system on proprietary Chinese medicines is not able to cope with the need. For example, if we want to change the contents, the concentration or levels, the DOH will say that this is too much. Or when the registration documents are prepared based on traditional recipes, the department may say that some of the processes have been amended and the application will be rejected. And some TCM practitioners expend money on the production of proprietary Chinese medicines, and it was said it will be rejected based on the fact that there is based on the practitioner's own experience rather than any old recipe.
My second point is that on the 30th of June, we're required to supply a report about stability standards, etc. When it comes to this technical point, in the past 6 to 7 years, we have already said that this is a Western concept, and SMEs will encounter a lot of difficulties. Even if money is spent, the report may not be completed. So will that be an alternative? Say, for example, for the group, they said that will be given 3 opportunities. That is, the Chinese Medicine Board said that we'll be given 3 chances to compile the report. What about this? We suspend your application, we will give you a notification, and after a certain period you are not allowed to produce or to sell your product. And in 2 or 3 years, if you have the finances, you can start your application anew, instead of just cutting off all the 8,000 transitional products. That is different from new ones because they've been in the market for many years. please support our idea to give us an alternative. And the board also said that you can ask a GMP manufacturers to process the product for us, but it fails to resolve the problem, because when it comes to registration of proprietary Chinese medicine, is for the manufacturer to make the application. When it's import, then it can be the wholesaler. What about this? It can be anyone as long as you can supply all the required information, and that person can be the one dealing with the registration. In 2010, you said that the Chinese Medicine Board that it should be in line with this, but why? Why was the decision made? We did not know. We ask legislators to ask members so that we can get some information. And if you want to improve testing and certification and GMP, there should be a dedicated fund to support local manufacturers. Thank you. Mr. Ngan is not here. Next we have Mr. Chow. The fourth one is not here. Well, with HKP we have HKC. Lots of times, we submit the documents, and it will take the board many years to reply to us whether our documents pass or not. But when it comes to lab reports, once it's submitted, we cannot simply just adopt the same batch after a few years. Normally, you should tell us as soon as possible, say 1 or 2 months after submission of the lab report, so that we can still make use of the tests. And sometimes you wait till 10 years to tell us that it is not accepted. Just like what Mr. Kwong said, if we've made the application a long time ago, documents have been submitted to the Chinese Medicine Board, and if the packaging has to be changed, well, it will take me no time to submit it, but I will have to wait for a year or so to get a reply. Well, and if we are asked for further information, we're only given 1 or 2 weeks. Otherwise, our HKP will be cut. When we make inquiries, they say that, well, it's still it's still in the queue, still wait in the queue. I wonder whether it's because of shortage of manpower. And in relation to the HKP number, if it's cut, does it mean that I should stop selling? What happens is that I would put in a nutrition label instead of an HKP number. But it's actually Chinese medicine. Say, for example, Bafengyuan, everyone knows that it's Chinese medicine, but I have to skip the HKP number and just put a nutrition label on it. There are so many of such products. Some of them don't even apply for an application. They just put a nutrition label on it. So there are more food with nutrition label that are actually Chinese medicine than just proper food. Sometimes if it's just something wrong with one number, I'll have to start doing it again. Next, Ms. Kong. Thank you. I represent OK Pharmaceutical Factory. I know that the administration promotes GMP in the hope that our trade will be aligned with international trend. We produce products that are mainly exported. And the problem is that we cannot align with international standard, because if we use GMP for our export, very often overseas countries do not recognize our GMP for Chinese medicine. When it comes to the US and Canada, they only recognize GMP for Western medicine. There is no such thing for Chinese medicine. So if we get one for Chinese medicine, does it mean that we can actually align with international standard? What about domestic sale on the mainland? They have GMP, they have the license. It's okay for them to sell the product on the mainland, but for us, we simply can't compete with them. And when it comes to registration of proprietary Chinese medicine, in overseas countries, are we recognized as medicine, or do we have to apply for another license? What about GMP for health food, so that it will align with international standard? Well, or just organic food. And someone said this previously, there is no clear criteria or standard, even for registration of proprietary Chinese medicine. There is no clear list of what standard we have to meet. Sometimes official A came to inspect us and then said that it's well, 1, 2, 3, 4 is not compliant, and then when official B comes, he may say, well, it's 4, 5, 6, 7 that is non-compliant. So when it comes to GNP, how can you align with international standard or Taiwan or mainland? We only have a small market, only 7 million. It's indeed very small. Next is Mr. Lam. I have a written submission, and I'll quickly go over it. Well, the regulation of Chinese proprietary medicine is too stringent, and there is insufficient support to the trade. Well, some people say that the number of products have dropped, but when it comes to those bearing a nutrition label, it has increased a lot. And newly registered products is also subject to the regulation, so very few of them will register. We of course support enhancement of quality, but the product with the best quality may not sell well. I hope the administration will not just regulate us without thinking about supporting us. They give us a lot of high standards, and as a result, we don't know what to do because there is no one to lead us. The administration is not involved in the setting of the Chinese material medical standards. Say, for example, when it comes to a prescription, well, it is produced as a tonic food without chemicals, according to the China Ministry of Health. And according to the factory, well, the there is a certain standard for this prescription. According to the pharmacopoeia. Well, actually, there is it lags behind for 10 years. Well, mainland China is the biggest consumer of Chinese medicine, but they take into account the size of their market. If there is no participation of government, I believe that there will be numerous standards in the market. If the government just want a high standard but a meaningless one, well, it's food for thought. The Hong Kong market is really too small. Chinese medicine is not used in the public healthcare system. There should be supporting measures to encourage SMEs to innovate and to turn to the international market. Don't let us die off. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lam. We have your submission. We have your written submission. Thank you, Mr. Wong. Thank you. I represent Hong Kong SME Development Federation Limited. We have the following suggestions. If non-GMP manufacturer asks GMP manufacturer to manufacture the product, we suggest that the DOH can give an exemption, because if the GMP manufacturer is entrusted to produce the product, then they will have to meet the relevant standards, and quality is guaranteed. For proprietary Chinese medicine that are not sold here, then it should not be mandatory that registration be done in Hong Kong. And in relation to introducing the GMP system, we have collected some views. If we adopt GMP, then our trade will have financial difficulties, and it will be difficult for us to recruit, and there is no technical support. When it comes to financial difficulties, well, most of our traders are SMEs, but with property prices standing so high, well, if we have to spend a lot of money to invest in a property without acquiring it, we may face closure when rental is increased. Perhaps some kind of subsidy should be given to us, just like Taiwan, Singapore, to help us upgrade and restructure, and maybe set up a support fund for GMP. And when it comes to difficulty in finding premises, well, the administration wants to revitalize industrial buildings. So perhaps we can be some can be allocated to GMP premises. We find it difficult to recruit. Perhaps there should be a qualification framework so that the people interested can get their certificate. And when it comes to support and training, well, there should be a support team set up by the government to give us advice and guidance. And there should be regular sharing sessions and training sessions, and for qualification certificates to be granted to those that have completed the training courses. And we think that there is still not time to introduce GMP, let alone PICS GMP. Thank you, Mr. Wong. Next is Miss Ng. Good morning. I would like to say that I hope the administration will listen to us more.
You should make us suffer unnecessarily. We should not waste resources. You should not make us lose money. Don't create grievances. Because who would compensate us if we suffer financially and otherwise? For example, because the question of PERP or Shao Wu, and in proprietary Chinese medicine, we were asked to include certain indication, but some are for external. Some of these medicines are for external use, some for internal consumption, and we asked whether we should use the same term, and that is whether we should use the same term, fallopian multifloral, and we changed the label, and then in December 2014, the Department of Health asked us to make further amendments concerning the reference to fallopian multifloral. So there was more than one version. Why didn't you listen to the trade and make a decision on whether we should distinguish between internal medicine and externally applied ones? And now we are asked to make all the necessary amendments to the label in 7 days. And before the 31st of March 2015, all products in the market will have to be withdrawn if they do not comply with the new rule. Who would compensate us for the loss? If the department would listen to us, there would have been no need to incur the additional expenses. I hope the administration will understand more the difficulties faced by the trade, and also the implications of the loss implications for changing textual descriptions, so that we will not be asked to get into more troubles. Mr. Chen Pawei. I'm from Hong Kong Chinese Medicine Merchants Association Limited. I have already given you my submission. Here I would like to just highlight a few points. In Hong Kong, the Chinese medicine trade comprises mainly SMEs, especially the distributors are usually very small in scale. They can be called micro businesses, and they don't have high education qualifications. They are unable to cope with a system based on modern practices. And now you ask for the documents to accompany the goods delivered. The trade is very concerned about this, but they are helpless. It looks simple on paper, but it's difficult. It's quite difficult to implement. We have to update our equipment and adopt computerization and increase manpower. And still, it's difficult. The so-called distributors or wholesalers would deliver the ordered goods on the same day, and they would just dispatch the goods right away upon receipt of an order, and it's all done on the same day. So even before we receive the documents sent to us, we have to send a document with our goods to the wholesalers, because the importers will only send us the document the next day. And sometimes there are different grades with regard to the same batch of goods, and there are of course different batches of goods. In a few hours' time, there will be no way we can clarify and ascertain the batch number of a product. I hope the Department of Health will understand the reality we face. Yeah, please be succinct. Please make it short. For years, we have suggested that the administration select a location to set up a Chinese medicines market near Central and Western District, so that the trade would have a market, and so that businesses in this sector will not be driven out of business by high rent. So can the administration consider building Chinese medicine product in Central and Western District, very much like we have markets for vegetables and fruits? Mr. Yuen Yi Lam, I'm a descendant of Mr. Yuen Kat Lam. Yuen Kat Lam has been around for more than 100 years. It's part of our traditional heritage. Because we do not just use the formula handed down from our forefather. We have been sticking to the ancient prescription. We use the traditional processes for drying the tea leaves we use under the sun. But the DOH would not allow us to do this because of possible pest infestation. And we put the tea leaf in a tray and dry them up in a cabinet. The temperature there is over 100 degrees. It would be there for more than 10 hours, so all germs or pests would have been killed. So instead of the traditional steaming and drying processes, we were not allowed to do the drying processes as in the past. So is the product still the traditional proprietary medicine? And instead, our products are supplied to Macau and local people. Not more than 5% will be exported. So why do you want us to comply with EU GMP standards to cater to the needs or requirements of foreigners? And we are asked to spend thousands of dollars to go for GMP. Maybe we should have a two-pronged approach. For big corporations, you should be allowed to go for GMP, but for smaller businesses, can't we be regulated by the traditional Chinese medicine practices? I hope members will carefully consider how we can protect our traditional pCM in Hong Kong. How can we offer protection to the community, ancient prescriptions in the community? Mr. Kong, I'm a director of an organization called Luen. If we adopt a high standard of GMP. All small PCM manufacturers would be driven out of business. Many of them would be forced to produce the tonic foods. If we want to develop Chinese medicine in Hong Kong and do a good job in the supervision system, we should set up factories, GMP factories for Hong Kong Chinese medicine manufacturing. It's just like universal suffrage. We don't go for international standards. We should have a standard for the 7 million people in Hong Kong for internal marketing of PCM. So manufacturers, big and small, if they want to export their products, they would have to follow GMP. And now we are detached from the development in Chinese medicine on the mainland, in the board, in the CMB. On the mainland, the medicine authorities have adopted very high standards. So I hope we can have some discussion with the relevant authorities on the mainland to see how Hong Kong should develop our Chinese medicine sector. We should develop Hong Kong into an exchange hub between Chinese medicine and Western medicine. That would create a very good prospect for us. Mr. Ma, Mr. Victor Ma, I'm a registered Chinese medicine practitioner. According to CAP 158A, a registered Chinese medicine practitioner can manufacture Chinese medicine for a particular patient. So we'll use our own prescriptions to prepare medicines for in a targeted approach for a particular patient, and it will be for immediate consumption. But according to this law, we can only do so after seeing the patient. So it would mean that there would be a delay of a few days. It goes against the tradition of using PCM to cure a patient immediately. I hope there should be some clarification on the meaning of the law.
If that is the case, then it is not in compliance with the legislative intent. And when it comes to the development of PCM, well, it should be based on a theory of Chinese medicine, and it is night and day from Western medicine. You can't imagine that a Western doctor, a doctor for Western medicine, will prescribe Chinese medicine. And Chinese medicine has always been seen as an alternative, health-preserving medicine. And since Chinese PCM can be exported, it's always been under the name of health-preserving medicine. So if we want PCM to become an internationally recognized product, then it should be positioned as health-preserving medicine and packaged as such to enter the international market. So PCM should only need to comply with the standard for health-preserving medicine, not medicine per se. And it should focus on Chinese market. Chinese people account for a large amount of the world's population. If we can maybe tap into 1 or 2% of it, it will be very good. pCM is not Western medicine, and it's not a compound substance. Why do you have to apply the standard for Western medicine on it? We need a standard that is in line with Taiwan and mainland China, not an international market. Mr. Wong, I speak on behalf of Wo Tong Chinese Medicine Merchants Association Ltd. Well, in order to circumvent the current system, a lot of the pCM has been sold as health-preserving medicine with a nutrition label. Well, Chinese medicine is something that uses a Chinese herb and is usually used by Chinese people. And if food is added to it, then it is not Chinese medicine. It should not be defined as pCM under the law. And it will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to have a pCM tested. But when it comes to nutrition label, it's only several $1,000s. For the former, the whole process will take several years. So Chinese pCM is sold with a nutrition label will attract a cost that is a lot lower. But however, the efficacy, safety are not tested, so public health is not protected. When it comes to those pCM that has got a healing or treatment properties, then there is no regulation on the dosage. Regulation of the Chinese medicine is to make sure that Chinese medicine is safe. And I think that these pCM should be subject to the same regime as soon as possible. Next, Mr. Daniel Wong. I would like to summarize what the other speakers have said, but I would focus on the direction of development for the trade. For public interest, yes, the standards should be enhanced. Chinese Medicine Ordinance has set down the framework and scope of regulation. When it comes to setting the scope, the ordinance should consider the views of every stakeholders, wholesalers, retailers, owners of IPR, professionals, Chinese medicine practitioners. They all have a different role to play, and so their views should be taken into account. It's just like what a manufacturer said. They focus on overseas markets. So when it comes to regulation, it should be separated if you have a different market. Say this product is for the local market and the other one is not. That it should be taken into account. For retailers, their main market is the local one, and their views should be taken into account. IPR owners, intellectual property rights owners, have you thought about how to facilitate licensing, processing. And how to enhance their professionalism when it comes to these IPR owners. What about the operating costs and the interests? The additional cost and the additional profit should be, and the extra profit should be bigger than the original profit. So stakeholders' views should be taken into account. For additional cost, that should be law enforcement, publicity, and education, so that more profit can be generated even with the additional cost. I hope the administration will consider that. Next, Ms. Lee. We have encountered a lot of baffling difficulties in the process of registration. It's a very complicated and difficult process, and we feel that we can't even breathe. And in relation to a stability report renewal, we contacted the Chinese Medicine Board, and they said that they could only give us a result after they've had a meeting, but not knowing when. And they've also told us that when we got our license, they've sent us a letter that in relation to one report, some information was missing, and before a certain date we had to give them the information, and we did so in 2013, and in December 2014, that is 21 months later, and they told us that the report is still not accepted. But it's a lab recognized and accepted by the board. How come there are so many loose ends, and when we're only told 21 months later? Is there an acute manpower shortage in the board? And there is no communication. There is difference between the testing requirement and the government's requirement, and we have to redo the test again at a high cost. We asked recognized laboratories to conduct the tests for us, but there is a difference between the technology and the requirement, and we've been asked to compile different reports without the technology required available. This stifles our development. We agree that registration for pCM is good. It will promote healthy development of the trade. However, it's been implemented for over 10 years. It is not properly done, and on the contrary, our room for survival has been stifled. There has been some experience sharing sessions. We're very interested. We would like to learn more about GMP. But I don't know whether it's because of my ability to understand. These seminars are short, they are incomprehensible and empty. The message I got is that for GMP, the machine is expensive, maintenance is expensive, personnel is expensive, and we will find it difficult to recruit. The official said we can go to industrial estates, but they've all been snatched up. And we can go somewhere else, but we can't meet the requirement. I hope that when it comes to regulation, it should not be an across-the-board regulation. The registration of pCM has squeezed a lot of us out of the market. There are only 12 of us left. They should get a better understanding of the problems instead of blindly launching these measures. We need room to survive. And if we can survive in a way, we will help Hong Kong economy. Next, Ms. Lee. Thank you. I agree with a dual system. That is, those who have the favorable condition, they should run the GMP. For those who don't, they should put it on hold, and it should be taken step by step. An administration should take the lead to set up a centralized testing laboratory. Well, I use mainland laboratories, but because of their numerous movements and campaigns, my work's been delayed and delayed, even though I've put in a lot of money. And I would like also to talk about intellectual property rights. It's the administration's responsibility to protect IPR owners. And it's necessary to give a certificate to prove the IPR ownership to small manufacturers. We found during the registration process that a lot of our product has been stolen and registered. And sometimes when you have got the HKP, you haven't really got the product. Because, well, the owners of the prescription would like to have it registered first without any manufacturing process started, because they don't want the product to be stolen. We're forced to submit documents, because if we don't, we won't be recognized as the manufacturer. A lot of people would like to get a share in this market. Some people have enjoyed this. Some of them have power. Well, in year 2008, when it comes to the HKP, well, 3 of my 4 eye drops have been registered. They spent $800. I wanted to wait till I get the HKC before I get a registration, and now I find that I can't because some of my products have been stolen. I am the creator of these products, but my rights are not protected. They've been stolen by some weasels, and it is not fair. So I hope that the DOH should liaise with the Intellectual Property Department, so that our registration date should be the IPR date as well. And our IPR should be protected. That's all I want to say.
跟住阿馬淑峰。
Miss Ma Suk Fong, it's Fong Suk Fong, sorry for that. With regard to the development of PCM, testing and certification and registration, I have given you a written submission. I would like to say a few points additionally. In the past 10 odd years, we have been working in accordance with the system of the DOH and the CMB, and we have devoted manpower and resources, time and capital to transform our factories. However, the authority has not provided substantial support. Only a few exchange sessions were conducted for the trade, and the trade was taken to be fully aware of the work required, and then they would be able to get the right people to test and certify the quality of their products. Actually, this is a massive project, and a lot of expertise is required. People have to be knowledgeable about the traditional and modern certification techniques and conduct the right analyses so that the right ones can be chosen, and we'll be able to fully comply with the authorities' requirements. And then we can set up reliable operational procedures for the manufacturing of pCM. So our SMEs are really up to this task. I venture to guess that many of the HKP manufacturers would close down, and as a result, the trade will decline in Hong Kong, and gradually the manufacturing of pCM in Hong Kong will die out. And the administration has spent billions of dollars in setting standards for Hong Kong Chinese medicine pharmacopoeia, but actually there's already a national standard. If we have a suitable quality standard for Hong Kong pCM, many of the difficulties for the trade can be resolved, and we will have a much more positive image to facilitate the development of trade. I propose that the Chinese medicine ordinance be fully reviewed and amended. I hope members, the administration will consider our proposals carefully. Ms. Bernice Leung, with regard to the requirements and in the current system, I would like to say that they would impede the development of pCM in Hong Kong. And only licensed pCM manufacturers can get registration, but individual TCM practitioners are not allowed to register for some of the Chinese products that they manufacture. If the DFH is confident about the system, why should they filter some of the potential applicants? Are there special reasons that they want to impose such a restriction to screen out potential applicants? I think all stakeholders should be allowed to offer suggestions that are good for the market. And also there is the so-called established medicines. It seems that this is for traditional Chinese medicine, but in reality, in the process of application, there are many hurdles. You have to come up with the formula which is at least 100 years old, and also the manufacturing processes must be the same, and this is difficult. This is problematic, and if this cannot be done, the applicant will be deterred. In the past 10 years, only a few applications were submitted, and as a result, many traditional brands cannot be further developed. It's bad for carrying on with the traditional manufacturing. I think there should be other requirements on empirical formula products, and we should make reference to New Zealand and Australia. they will accept medicines that have been used for 30 or 50 years. In New Zealand, they've also got a category of listed medicines saying that they have not been tested to the modern standards, but there is literature to prove that they are regarded as drugs with proper efficacy, traditionally speaking. Ms. Luen, I want to say about how we can simplify the process whereby HKP can be gradually turned into HKC. We can go to the website of CMB and for a list of pCM starting from 2003 when they started to receive the application 14,100 applications were received. Only 445 have been given HKC certifications. Traditional has been registered as HKC. Some previously HKP or NT formula. So it's just less than 3.17%. And there are products, Chinese medicine products that can be tested, or they just use one particular type of Chinese medicine, and it's 42.2%. The remaining HKC products are from factories on the mainland, and they are just being marketed by Hong Kong companies. And many are from the Chinese pharmacopoeia, and traditional formula were used. So these medicines are easy to test, and still only 3.17% were successful in getting HKC registration. So you can imagine how difficult the process is. To be successful, we have to submit reports on safety and stability and efficacy. Many of applicants are unable to provide reliable information on the quality. First, the composition is much more complex. In a Chinese medicine product, there are maybe dozens of herbal medicines, so it's very much more complicated. After the Second World War, Hong Kong still stuck to traditional processes, and there are quality medicine produced. And some traditional pCM could not be tested in the modern sense. And sometimes the information provided in the application form might be wrong, because they may be just trained through an apprenticeship system. So there are only a few of them who could really fill in the forms and do all the documentation required. So the testing is made even more difficult. So can we ask the applicant to rectify the mistakes in one go? And more time should be allowed for HKP products to supplement the required information in the application process. Mr. Pang, Mr. Jack Pang. Thank you, Chairman, Dr. Chen, and other fellow participants. I want to make 3 points. First, about the detailed stipulations in the CMO, and also the process of transforming HKP to HKC, and also the adoption of GMP. Mr. Choi and Mr. Ng Wong Mao have referred to the stipulations in the ordinance, in the law, and also the renewal process. So can the license be valid for 3 to 5 years in the future? On the question of detailed requirements. Mr. Ng has given you detailed information. Can we work out or review the detailed stipulations, what we can keep and what we should do away with based on the experience of past 10 odd years? I believe can this be done by the department without the need to go through this council? Many dozens or so of experienced manufacturers have taught us the questions regarding the labeling requirement and their dealings with the Department of Health over some details and standards. Well, 10 labs may come up with 10 different standards. Can we have a uniform set of standards for the trade? We have been talking about radish polygony multifluoride. 2 years ago, some standards were okay, and 2 years later, they are not. And this has led to losses. Maybe sometimes the products will not be completely sold out in 2 years. So when the department asks for the rectification in 7 days, who would bear the costs? Who would compensate us for the loss? As for the transformation from HKP to HKC, and also the commencement date of June, can we do something like the system for the TCM practitioners and the listed CMPs? The listed CMP can still practice while they seek to get registration as CMPs. But we are going to invite other deputations on the issues surrounding CMP. Please be succinct. On GMP, I think you've heard the trade's views. I think at least half of them would not take up GMP. We should have a dual-track system. If a manufacturer has the resources to implement GMP, well, this is most welcome. But if they cannot code, can they just can they be allowed to continue as long as safety can be ensured? Mr. Kong Chi-hong, thank you. I represent Hong Kong Chinese Medicine Manufacturers United Association.
When it comes to the development plan of our trade, I have some things to say. Since 1999, with the enactment of the Chinese Medicine Ordinance and the implementation of the enforcement of the law, it's been over 10 years. However, nothing is clear. We don't know about our way forward, and we think it's because of two reasons. First, there is no development blueprint of Chinese medicine in Hong Kong. They only know to enhance regulation, and they did not help us develop. And they have completely neglected Hong Kong's situation. And they force PICS GMP on us. I hope that the administration will take our situation into account, and there should be representatives of the Chinese trade in the development the advisory body for development, that is the Chinese Medicine Development Committee. And there should be more discussion between the trade and the government, so that they can understand us better and we can get our voice heard. The current dual track approach is better than GMP or PICS. The current system should continue. Those who don't have the capability should continue their operation under the current system. Those who have the capability should change to GMP with the help of the government. There is no need to force the EU GMP on us. Ms. Choi. Thank you. You will find my written submission in front of you. And I would like to say just a few points about the registration of pCM. One, when we're trying to track our registration documents, these things happen. First, when they're dealing with the same document, they have repeatedly asked us for different documents. And they told us that it fails to meet the requirement. But nothing is made clear to us. We keep furnishing them with other documents, and every time they told us that they still need more. And the staff changes. The staff change all the time, and different staff members has a different standard. So when it comes to these technical and complicated documents, say for example information of test results, there should be guidelines or templates or samples for our reference so that we know what to follow. And the DFH has started vetting reports submitted in 2003, more than 10 years ago. But they've updated the guidelines and we're required to follow the latest requirement. Even the labs can't find the tests that were done 10 years ago. The DFH should liaise with the labs and the DFH should know better the requirements of the Chinese Medicine Board, so that our registration application can be properly dealt with. Thank you. Next, Mr. Tam. I represent Hong Kong Chinese Patent Medicine Manufacturers Association. Our members are mostly manufacturers of pCM, and we've heard about the many difficulties encountered during registration. I'd like to talk about a point mentioned by Mr. Tam, that is HKP telling to HKC. In 2003, the DFH has done a lot, but HKP is going to be HKC. When the manufacturer wants to get HKC on the same product, there cannot be coexistence of HKP and HKC, so it is a big problem. There will be a vacuum in the market. Say we have over 3,000 pharmacies and manufacturers in Hong Kong, and for some they don't have the time to change the product. Say they can change the one in shop A, but in shop B and C maybe the HKP products have not been switched yet. But according to the legislation, HKP product and HKC product cannot coexist. And wholesalers are told to not launch the HKC product, and they will have to wait for HKP products to be all purchased, and it may be a few years. And there is a chance of a recall, but it's not because of an incident. However, the media may think that the recall of a pCM may mean a problem because they don't understand that it's simply because of a change from Hong Kong P to Hong Kong C. So how come that the two products cannot coexist? If we recall HKP products, I don't know what is the condition of storage in the individual shops. And instead of reprocessing these recalled products, we will just destroy them, and this will have an impact on the environment. Of course, hopefully with HKC product available, HKP product can still exist. Say for example on the 26th of January we get Hong Kong C, then there should not be any Hong Kong P products dated post 26th of January. But before that it should be okay. We don't have additional resources to enhance to GMP after dealing with the Hong Kong P, Hong Kong C. Thank you. Next, Mr. Edward Fung. Thank you. I would like to talk about market development. We hope the administration will help the healthy development of our market. Well, when it comes to Hong Kong pCM market, there is potential. Most of them are ancient prescriptions, and a lot of tourists come to Hong Kong to buy our pCM. It shows that they are very popular. And one of the reasons is that we local manufacturers enjoy very good reputation, and local ancient prescriptions are very effective. There are lots of Chinese living in Southeast Asia, and it's a market that we value. We hope the administration can, the development committee can help us bridge the gap. And these are our suggestions. That the development committee should help us conduct surveys. Over 90% of our manufacturers are not GMP recognized. The committee should analyze the information and develop markets that don't require GMP. Say some developing countries, what the sales of a pCM is like. Some of our oil is sold as massage oils, and some of our products are sold as health-preserving medicine. And the development committee should help the local market to develop a pCM market. On mainland China, there is a joint committee for pCM to help pCM manufactured on the mainland to export to third world countries or Africa. And in South Africa, some of the product has been accepted into their healthcare system. We hope this approach is adopted so that countries don't require GMP registration, can still see our products, say, for example, by organizing seminars or promotional activities. Well, if local manufacturers think there is a profit to be made in the markets that require GMP, of course that they will be happy to adopt GMP when they are ready to do so. So I think the crux of the problem is the return in target markets. If we blindly pursue GMP regulation, and if it doesn't generate a profit, it will end in closure of a lot of our manufacturers. Since our market is only Hong Kong and Macau, I think the current regulation suffices. Next, Mr. Yick. I am from the DAB. We attach importance to the development of the local Chinese medicine market. In April last year, we announced a proposal, and in August last year, we organized a seminar. Over 100 people from the sector attended. On a regular basis, we convene meetings with the Chinese medicine trade. We have some suggestions. The administration always says that there is already a healthy development of our market, but they are only referring to some large corporations. There are some smaller but old manufacturers. They are not familiar with the technicalities. They have encountered a lot of difficulties in registration. For some really ancient products, they fail to be registered. We can see that the current registration system is flawed because only a small number of products can get registration. The administration fails to take into account the difficulties and the actual situation. There should be a fund set up for development of Chinese medicine, so that a platform can be established to help the trade. And the policy address already said that there should be a center set up to develop the Hong Kong Chinese Materia Medica standards. And on the mainland, they have the pharmacopoeia. So why don't we take reference from them? A lot of visitors purchase pCM manufactured locally. It's a vote of confidence. Tourists actually is the main target of the manufacturers. We should work together to form a Greater China market. Assistance should be given to help local products to enter the Chinese market. Currently, the testing methods of Chinese medicine use those for Western medicine. There should be a review of the ordinance, and the administration should get a better understanding of the trade so that there can be a healthy development of the trade. Thank you. Next is Mr. Young.
In 2014, Hong Kong Institution of Biotechnology Limited organized 2-day courses on GMP for the trade, and through this we understand the current situation with the trade. Actually, the Hong Kong GMP guidelines for pCM is similar to that for Western medicine. And because the manufacturing of Western PMC has been supported by proper testing procedures and testing procedures. And now we are still talking about how we can improve the testing of pCM. And would the traditional manufacturing processes be acceptable under the GMP system? Or can they comply with GMP standards? We need to explore this. With 13 GMP drug medicine manufacturers, they and the DFH has been taking first steps to introduce GMP for pCM. The Institute is of the view that we should upgrade the quality of pCM through the introduction of GMP, but this can be done in stages. For example, in the first stage, we should ask bigger manufacturers to adopt the GMP software, and then we should identify the suitable technologies and processes to comply with GMP. This will take a longer time because we need to involve research institutions and the cooperation of the trade, and it will be time-consuming for the DFH staff to assess whether ultimately GMP standards can be reached. This will be very time-consuming. And the third stage will be for the pCM manufacturer to decide whether to convert or to transform their operations to live up to GMP standards. They may have to convert their factories, for example. And given the uncertainties right now, I think GMP, the trade should be allowed more time to gather experience to see whether they should adopt GMP. A few years later, when Western medicines are already GMP compliant, and then for Chinese pCMs, and we should also cross-reference with PICS organizations to see whether at that time GMP should be adopted across the board. Mr. Kong Ka-fung, Chinese medicine development, testing, and accreditations will be covered by our submission. My company is a family business. If a GMP is imposed on my company, we may have to cease the manufacturing of pCM because we cannot cope. I hope the administration should be urged to make certain promises. The government should support those which can switch to pCM, but if some of the manufacturers are not suitable for the adoption of CPM, the administration should allow them to continue under the current system so that they can continue with their business and make a living. The development committee's direction is really about single formula Chinese pCM, but not composite formula. The government has expended hundreds of millions of dollars in research. They should treat all the manufacturers fairly. There should be a dedicated fund to help pCM sector to improve quality and to facilitate the further development of the trade. Chinese medicine is part of our cultural heritage. PCM has been traditionally manufactured based on traditional Chinese medicine principles and concepts. But now, in Hong Kong, we want to impose modern pharmaceutical concepts on PCM manufacturing, and they only focus on scientific testing and certification, and they have paid little attention to the special characteristics of Chinese medicine. We would like to ask members of this council to urge the administration to review the CMO and the definition of Chinese PCM so that the trade can develop properly. If the changes are imposed on us, we are going to see the gradual decline of Chinese medicine in Hong Kong. I'm from Hong Kong Productivity Council. I just want to talk about GMP. The introduction of GMP for PCM manufacturing is about improving the safety and efficacy and quality of PCM. This is a positive development. However, many SMEs in the trade suffer from a lack of resources, and the gap between the manufacturing processes and the standards are far behind the GMP standards, and there should be more training courses and seminars and internet platforms to inform the sector. We know from our contact with the trade that the manufacturers would like to build their own GMP compliant factories. If the government builds such factory premises for the non-compliant manufacturers, and how many factories will be needed? 1, 2, and some of the manufacturers will have to make public their formula and prescriptions, and they face difficulties in meeting the funding requirement for GMP compliant factory premises. The government should provide proper support or matching funds to facilitate the continued development sector. The government should also step up publicity so that the general public will understand more what GMP is. GMP is a very high level standard for the supervision of the manufacturing of medicines. And if there's a high level of awareness, people will have more confidence in GMP, and the public will know that this is not just about branding, because some other branding publicity can be confusing and misleading. Lastly, we would like the administration to help the trade and enhance the general standard in the trade. Mr. Wong, I want to talk about the registration of PCM. The system has been announced for more than 10 years, but there's a question about the variation in contents. The mainland standard has not been fully implemented, but we want to go for the content testing starting from 2003. But we need to get to know the right method. If we have dozens of standards, then you have to pay millions for testing, and you have to also test the products for stability, and that's another expenditure. and the administration doesn't provide any support, any funding support at all. It's all on the trade. And it's said that this is a commercial decision. If you want to do it, you have to pay for it. So we are just asked to the swim or sink. Well, we want to carry on as long as we can, but there are fewer and fewer products. It's a declining trade. The administration should carefully consider the reasons behind this phenomena. This is about pCM. And next question is GMP. For traditional Chinese medicine, they have traditional processes, for example, steaming and drying for 9 times. It's going to decline as a manufacturing practice. With just 13 GMP pharmaceutical manufacturers, and that's not going to see any development in the future. That's all I want to say. Mr. Chris Chow, I want to talk about the difficulties I face in my business operation. We need to deal with the D of H over documentation. For example, transfer from one factory to another. We'll prepare all the documents and submit them to the D of H. Maybe D of H is busy. They don't give you an indication as to when a reply can be expected. But you know the time is important in business. And sometimes they don't give us a reply after 2 or 3 months, and we'll have to pursue them for a reply. We hope there should be a definite time frame so that we can operate our business processes more smoothly in the market. There are many pCM-like products with 7+1 nutrition labeling. There's different types of products in the market. There are more such products than the registered pCM products. Some of them are really the traditional pCM, and they just get one component set, collagen, and then that is sell as a health preservation product. We have to spend a lot of time, money in getting the registration, and now they can be sold as a food product. Sometimes I consider the following suit, and in the past, the DOH provide a categorization service, and now it's been cancelled because I would like to know whether a certain product would be categorized as a Western medicine, Chinese pCM, or a food product. We ask the question, and the reply is that you should assess it yourself. If you say it is a certain product, then it will be regarded as such.
As to whether we can do it another way, they'll have them listed out clearly as pCM or health-preserving medicine. I hope that there can be some clear guidelines. I support registration of pCM. However, with the current system, I wonder how many products will be left in the market when it's changed from Hong Kong P to Hong Kong C. That is very regrettable. Thank you. Next, Ms. Tse. I believe that in the first public consultation session, you have heard about the difficulties of the trade. I am here to tell you about what we think. Well, Chinese medicine has a long history. It relies heavily on herbology. With societal changes, there are reforms on medicine. They require more scientific evidence. And nowadays, they want to use GMP as the criteria. Well, some medicine may only have a shelf life of 5 years. For the next batch, then we will have to send them for GMP testing again, which will be costly. We should not rush. And GMP is we will need a long time to accept GMP. Maybe they will set up the Hong Kong CMMS first, and if we're asked to adopt the EU standard, then they will have to take into account our difficulties. 5 years research time will be more reasonable than 2. Next, Mr. Lai. Thank you. I thank the chairman for inviting us to come to tell you about our difficulties. Chinese medicine has thousands of years of history. It's our cultural heritage. When it comes to the registration requirement of pCM, it's very difficult and complicated. You will have to invest endlessly, and in the end, you may not get what you want. There are a lot of products that has been in the market for many years, but the manufacturer cannot afford the huge testing fees, and they close or are planning to close. A lot of ancient prescriptions are lost as a result. So, registration of pCM, is it for the promotion of development of the trade, or is it a death warrant of the trade? There are about 200 manufacturers or so in the market now. If GMP is imposed on them, I believe that I want to ask how many of the manufacturers can meet the requirement. And continue its operation. It's practically impossible. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars. The registration system started in 2004. It's been almost 11 years. There is insufficient assistance. I suggest that before we can overcome the difficulties in testing, the procedure should be streamlined and a more relaxed approach should be adopted so that there is some breathing space for the trade. Thank you. Next, Mr. Danny Lai. My factory has been in Hong Kong for 36 years. We've seen the ups and downs of the Chinese medicine trade. Well, ever since the registration system has been put in place, it has pushed us into an ice age. There were over 14,000 applications for the transitional notice. However, after 11 years, there are only 8,000 or so with HKP and 277 manufacturers left. We have no support. We are shrinking. A lot of the manufacturers that are about to close, they own a lot of ancient prescriptions, and these prescriptions will be lost as a result. And they've been in place for thousands of years, and that is regrettable. The government said they're going to turn Hong Kong into a Chinese medicine pot, and you call this promotion of development. And I'd like to draw your attention to some points. Well, with the transitional registration application, it takes a long time. It requires that these products should be for sale before, well, in 1999, but it's been 16 years, and the products have been changed. Say, for example, in the 80s or 90s, pellet form was quite popular, but now they would like to change the form of the medicine. And a lot of these testings are to be done on the basis of Western medicine. It's very difficult for China or for pCM to pass these tests. We understand that the regulation is to protect public health, but a lot of manufacturers have encountered difficulties. A lot of the smaller ones or medium-sized manufacturers have simply closed down. They have killed a lot of good ancient prescriptions and stifled our room for development. And in the end, users suffer. I hope that there will be a review of the registration system. The process should be streamlined. Wherever possible, a more relaxed approach should be adopted for those products that have passed the 3 tests. The burden on manufacturers should be lightened so that these ancient prescriptions will not be lost. Thank you, Mr. Lai. Well, deputations and individuals have spoken. Just like last time, a number of points have been highlighted. I believe that they've been heard very clearly. Well, I'll ask the Secretary to reply before members ask questions. Director, Under Secretary, I thank you all for coming to talk to us. You have given us your valuable input, your experience, whether it's on HKP to HKC or GMP, the difficulties you have encountered and the concerns you have. I also see your enthusiasm towards Chinese medicine, and a lot of you would like to align with the international standard. During the transitional period from Hong Kong P to Hong Kong C, I have heard from you about your views. I will defer to Dr. Lam for to explain to you about the details. We will reflect your views to the Chinese Medicine Board for consideration. Someone said that when it comes to registration and GMP, the adoption of GMP, a lot of stakeholders are affected. They may be manufacturers, wholesalers, Chinese medicine practitioners, or those engaged in R&D. We keep in touch with you to hoping to minimize the impact. We would like pCM to be safe. We would like to promote pCM locally and internationally. Someone said that there is no chance of alignment with the international market. I would like to say that for Chinese medicine GMP in Taiwan, China, Singapore, and Malaysia, it has been adopted. So yes, there is an alignment with the international market. We would like to hear your views. A lot of views are about registration. Some think that the time is too short. Some think that once the form is submitted, it takes a long time. Our purpose is to ensure that products meet with our requirements to ensure safety. We respect the fact that Chinese medicine is a Chinese tradition. We do not want to stifle your survival. We have the responsibility to ensure safety of products. We need to protect public health. And at the same time, we would like to minimize the difficulties you encounter. There is assistance, but maybe they are not targeted enough. I ask for your understanding. The Department of Health, I believe, has heard you. And about the post-registration arrangement, and once it's changed, well, how come HKP and HKC products cannot coexist in the market?
Well, if this is allowed, it can be very confusing. Well, we do provide a grace period, 6 months. After you get HAP, you can continue to sell the products under HAC. If you need more time, you can submit an application to DOH. That is to say, if 6 months is not sufficient for you, you should talk to the DOH. Another big issue is GMP. A clarification first. GMP and the progress from HKP to HAC are different because the latter is subject to a timetable. GMP is about dovetailing with international standards. Many drug manufacturers are lagging far behind the GMP standards, so you think that the gap is difficult to fill. But this is just a a basic requirement internationally. At this stage, GMP is not a prescribed standard. It's not mandatory. We'd like to work out a timetable with the trade, and we'll listen to your views. Last time and this time, we've heard divergent views about financial affordability, software, hardware, technological support, training, and whether the government can provide a fund to support the adoption. We hope that this process is not something that we impose on you, but this is an international standard. And we have also heard views that we should not adopt PICS for the time being. PICS actually is a higher standard internationally. We are now gathering views from the Chinese medicine trade. The DFH has organized briefing sessions. And last time and this time we have mentioned that training courses have been organized, and ITF has also sponsored the Hong Kong Institute of Biotechnology to offer basic training courses on GMP manufacturing. And we are aware of the views of some SMEs, and the ITC has also cooperated with the Hong Kong Jockey Cup charities funds to expand the infrastructure for GMP manufacturing. We hope to work with the trade to alleviate the pressure you face and solve the problems together. Some deputations have spoken on the development of Chinese medicine. As Mr. Choi, who told us the findings of a survey. And it seems that not many people are aware of the existence of the Chinese Medicine Development Committee and the work in this regard in the administration. But the Development Committee is led by the Secretary himself, and there are different units on Chinese medicine and pCM. We hope through the work of the Development Committee we can map out a blueprint, and I believe the committee, the Development Committee, will be able to give us valuable input in drawing up of the blueprint for the trade. So I thank deputations for giving us valuable input concerning the situation of the trade. On the other hand, there's a need to balance the needs of the public and also public hygiene. And we'll work out an implementation timetable of for the adoption of GMP. On that basis, rest assured that this is going to be a gradual process. Chairman, if I may, I would like to defer to Dr. Lam to say something at this moment. I would like to say something about the technical issues. We understand the difficulties of the trade, the challenges they face. Please speak closer to the mic.
差唔多每個月或者每兩個月咧，都會就住無論係
Once every 2 months, we would engage the trade in a dialogue on various issues, and we welcome the views from the trade for their difficulties. And some deputations have mentioned the long time needed for the submission of documents and getting replies. the CMB, in dealing with applications, will pay particular attention to the need to ensure the due process is complied with, and will allow sufficient time for supplementary information to be provided. So maybe that's why you think that the whole process is takes a long time, and very often will also be asked to give the tray more time because the need to conduct tests. So if more time is needed, you can always ask the DFH, and very often we would allow more time. And then there's a question of why all of a sudden we have certain additional requirements, say for the radix polygony multifori. Well, but you know that this is a developing scene, and very often we have reports of adverse reaction to certain drugs, and sometimes drugs taken on a prolonged basis may create certain undesirable side effects. Mr. Fang, I would like the doctor to be brief. First of all, I would like to seek members' consent to extend the meeting by 15 minutes. Dr. Lam? There may be a new research reports necessitating some more information in the label. We have set up as a testing center so that we can set up standards, we can enhance quality of raw material, and also internationalization. We are not going to give up research in our university just because we have the new testing center. And all your concerns will be reflected to the Council and the CMB. Thank you. It's time for members to raise questions. Dr. Joseph Lee and Dr. Elizabeth Kwong and Mr. Vincent Fang. Well, I thank the deputations for coming to tell us the difficulties they face. And I hope to get some response from the deputations and from the administration. From the administration, I seem to have heard that they are willing to accede to every request. But what about the deputations? You seem to suggest that they can ask for more time, and you allow this and allow that. Why is it that the deputation don't seem to know this? Are you going to have a proper meeting, one further meeting, to tell them what you are willing to do? Well, the chairman is smart enough to have this hearing. Otherwise, they would see differently as requires what should be done. I find it curious because they don't seem to know that there will be more time for the progress from HKP to HKC. Well, I'm not in this tray, but I've been taking Chinese medicines, and I'm of course concerned about quality, but I'm a bit worried about the lack of communication between the two sides. I have some questions for the administration. Since 2004, you have introduced the registration system. Can you be given us some figures? There were 14,000 applications, and now only 8,000 are outstanding. And before the registration, the safety could not be ensured. People could have been killed, and there were many cases of recall. So after the registration system,
was introduced, how many pCms were taken away, or how many products disappeared, and how many traditional prescriptions were gone? Please tell us the figures. You talk about the premise, which is public safety, public hygiene, but will your system lead to the disappearance of old traditional prescriptions? Because those have been proved to be helpful, and they claim to be able to deal with all kinds of ailments. One of the deputations, the one from representing Yick, the 9 steaming process plus 9 drying processes. But after the introduction of the new system, they are not allowed to do the drying processes in the traditional way. Will the product be still effective? Are you trying to get rid of traditional processes in order to comply with modern Western standards? Do you know how this should be done under Chinese medicine? Are you driving out traditional prescription and formulas? And also, you have been talking about following the international standard by the adoption of GMP. Well, when I was upstairs, I followed this meeting. He said that it's done in Singapore and the mainland, but the deputations have been saying that they are not doing a lot of export business. So why do you want to follow international standards? Undersecretary? Thank you, Dr. Lee. Let me stress, reiterate the current situation, and Dr. Lam can then supplement. In implementing HKP and HKC and also GMP, we have set up different communication channels, and we have organized technical meetings. Dr. Lam can give you some details. If people are still not aware of the different channels, well, we have an open mind. We would do what we can to communicate with the trade. And Dr. Lam has talked about quite a lot of details. You may not be able to digest all the information in one go, but it's okay. The communication channels will be kept open. Dr. Lam. Dr. Lee asks why the trade seems not to be aware of the way applications are handled. Well, this is not done by the government. It's an independent body called the Chinese Medicines Board. The experts and the trade representatives on the board, we have to vet the board, and ultimately it will be subject to the endorsement of the Chinese Medicine Council of Hong Kong. So that's why time is needed. So you may have the impression that it is a very lengthy process.
When it comes to preserving our traditional prescriptions, well, we attach a lot of importance on the guidance of theory. When manufacturers are asked to provide the combination and the formula, they are required to provide us with an interpretation. That is to explain why they think that it will promote health or cure diseases. The question is not answered. Just tell us yes or no if you can whether you can give us the figures. There are 8,500 that have got HKP. Those who are formally registered, about 4,000 or so. Most of the rejections are related to furnishing of basic information. Perhaps you will give us a written reply Yes. Well, I think it's a reply not to me, but to the trade. Well, then we'll ask the trade to refer to the written reply. Mr. Vincent Fang. Once again, we trouble those from the trade to come to us. They have to put their business aside. To be honest, it's a waste of time. This is not the first time. There has been many times, and every time the administration said that we will listen to you, we have heard you, and we would do a review, this and that. And I think they are just taking us around the block, especially taking us the trip to the garden, especially the Undersecretary. They told us about supporting the development of the Chinese medicine. Well, you ask the trade if they think that the administration has been helping them. Well, of the many manufacturers now, we only have 277. If nothing is done, the number will reduce. There is no support to the trade whatsoever. Of course, a GMP sounds good. Stringent regulation, safety, everyone knows it. Alignment with the international market. But we're talking about products that are sold locally. There's no need to align with the international market. May I suggest that all these products should be labeled health products. Now there are only 277. Some ancient prescriptions are lost. You've been asking them to furnish information. Well, then why can't you ask Coca-Cola to give you their formula for testing? Now how come you ask the Chinese medicine the trade to give you their formula? And you talk about GMP. For SMEs, GMP is impossible. And you even ask about, you even mention pigs. It is really scary. You want to ensure safety, or you want to kill the trade? Just in case they are not dying quick enough, you set up the Hong Kong CMMS. So it's only a matter of time when they all die out. Isn't this contrary to what the CE said? That is to help the development of the trade. There are less and less manufacturers. A lot of their products have been proved to be effective. And you ask the Institute, the Hong Kong Institute of Biotechnology, to help with the testing. Well, I've asked the Secretary a lot of times if those that are in Science Park are used to deal with manufacturing, then are the manufacturers supposed to sack everyone? The administration did not give us an answer. They just say that they will support the trade. Now, do you think that they've supported you? You see a lot of hands. They all think that you did not support them, and the Secretary. Well, the reason why it's gone down to 200, I will defer to Dr. Luen. Don't ask the director to give us an answer. It's a waste of time. Yeah, but we need to explain the figures. Well, when it comes to alignment with the international market, it's actually a request from us and also from the trade. Even for domestic sale, they need to meet GMP because we're talking about safety and standard. So you still need GMP when it's domestic sale. And someone mentioned about health products. There is regulation on health products. It's covered by numerous ordinances. Say, for example, undesirable advertisement, the nutrition label legislation. Well, if you're not clear about it, yeah, we should step up our publicity. I'll defer to Dr. Lam. Well, the reason why some manufacturers cannot move over is because sometimes one person registered for several, and then after clarification the number has gone down, and in our inspection we found some factories falling short of the hygiene standard. So you think that the market, the trade has shrunk or not? Yes or no? It's a simple question. On the number, yes, the number of products and the number of manufacturers have dropped. But it's because we have to enhance safety, and only those products that have met the requirements can pass. Ms. Elizabeth quote. I've been sitting here the whole time listening to everything. On a number of occasions, I asked the same question. Yes, it's with good intentions that you would like to protect public health. That's why you introduce these measures. But we've heard very clear from the trade on both public hearings that they don't know what they're supposed to do. There might be sharing sessions and seminars, but one of the deputations said that she has been to several seminars and she did not understand you, and the only impression she got was that everything was expensive. It seems that the trade fails to understand what you require of them. We think that Chinese medicine industry is very important in Hong Kong. For a lot of the products, they've been in the market for many years, and generations of people have been using it. It is unacceptable, and it is very regrettable that some manufacturers and some products die simply because you want to regulate them. Whatever you say, it seems that you're doing something bad out of good intentions. I'm very worried. I hope the administration will review their work. I hope the subcommittee will follow this up point by point with the administration. We'll need you to give us your views. I understand your problem and your concern. I hope the administration should not just implement these standards for the sake of it. You told us that, some people told us that their products are mainly for overseas markets. So as long as they meet the overseas market requirements, there is no need to impose another set of standards on the local market. Any reply? I thank Ms. Kwok for her views. GMP is not mandatory. This is a good chance to hear from the trade. We'll work together to overcome the difficulties and to work on a feasible timetable. Well, it seems that the trade doesn't think you're working with them. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. I think the crux of the problem may be that the administration's looking at Chinese medicine from the eyes of Western medicine. You impose Western standards and requirements on Chinese medicine. I think you have to change your mentality. You have to respect our tradition. Our culture that has been in place for over 5,000 years. We have our own ways. Say in Tibet, there are Tibetan doctors, traditional Tibetan medicine. We respect ethnic minorities. We respect their tradition. But it doesn't mean that they will be given a free rein. Do we have to adopt a stringent approach? You are painting the local Chinese medicine industry into a corner. I don't doubt your intentions, but you have to adjust your mentality. Don't see it from the perspective of Western medicine. Don't paint Chinese medicine into a corner. Are you doing that, Under Secretary? No. We've heard what is said. We're not pushing anyone. We're not painting anyone to a corner. We have the responsibility to ensure public health. Mr. Wong mentioned about China, but they have GMP for Chinese medicine. For locally manufactured products, if they are to be sold on the mainland, then they have to be covered by GMP. And this is the direction we are going to take. Just now, the deputation mentioned about a dual-track approach. Say, if the overseas market is used, they will have to meet the respective standards and requirements. But I noticed that most of the operators in the market are SMEs that focus on Hong Kong market. If their products are harmful to Hong Kong people, there will be legislations regulating that. Should you make something out of nothing? You've actually stifling their development. They are only asking humbly for a dual-track system.
咁我哋中藥方面嘅中小企
These SMEs in the trade have certain needs. Would you consider doing something to help them? As I've said, at this stage, GMP is not mandatory. It's not implemented as a mandatory requirement. When it comes to the management and the manufacturing of pCM production, we would like to move ahead with the times. That's why we need GMP. At this stage, it's
is still in consultation. We don't have a definite timetable to implement this. So through the stages of the process, we'll try to do different things to alleviate the difficulties faced. So this is still in the consultation period. I hope you heard them, and then you come up with something practical. We have had 2 public hearings, and we have heard views from the trade. Different views have been expressed. There were things that were not considered in detail in enacting the ordinance. So this time we have Yun Lam, a traditional manufacturer. Would they be allowed to continue in the new environment under the new system? Members who have spoken are concerned about this. If our system doesn't allow traditional manufacturing to continue, then I would say it's a failed system. And from the 2 public hearings we have had, I think the administration's policy is too aloft to be realistic. And Chinese medicines is a sector that no one cares about. They will offer the transitional arrangement, and the trade was asked to muddle through, and that's all they can do to help you. And the Bureau should attach importance to the survey findings that we have been referred to. And also the Development Committee has a very low awareness, has gained a very low awareness level. That is to say, the trade doesn't know a lot about the work of the committee. And I hope the views expressed in the 2 public hearings can be taken to the Secretary. And many of them would like to let the Development Committee know about their aspirations and views. I have a few questions for the Bureau. First, the setting up of a bill. We have funds for fisheries, for agriculture, and different sorts of economic activity, and we even have a fund for the replacement of old vehicles. Last time we asked about a fund, the trade was referred to the fund operated by the TID. So my question is this: can we have a new fund, dedicated fund for this? And second, we have serious problem for the transition from HKP to HKC. The transitional period will last until June. June, right? June this year. With Dr. Lam, it's June, right? So it's going to expire soon. Then 8,000 Hong Kong HKP products, would they be all become disqualified products? And we should wave goodbye to them. And also, when they apply for HKC to take the place of HKC, once the application is approved, they will have to recall or take back all the HKP products. But some of them are already in the community pharmacies. If they initiate a recall, then there will be a big image problem for the product, internationally speaking. So you have to deal with the need for a recall of HKP products. Perhaps you should look at the shelf life, say 2 years should be allowed. And you should not ask them to apply individually because that would mean that some will be approved but some may not be approved. And some deputations have offered views on health preservation products, because if some of these products are found to be problematic later, that would deal a blow to the pCM sector. And some deputations have suggested that the CM ordinance be reviewed, because it has been around for many years. Would that be reviewed? Is there a timetable for the proposed review? I think I have sort of summarized the views expressed. I will give you 2 minutes, Undersecretary, to wrap up. Maybe I can provide some response here. I've heard from the deputations that you want to set up a fund. We'll consider this. As for the transition from HKP to HKC, this is the deadline is for the CMB, Chinese Medicine Board. I think the board is aware of the views, and of course we will take your views back to the CMB so that the board can decide what it can do. Well, you can take the views to the CMB, and sometimes the problems doesn't lie with the CMB, but the change of staff. And some of them have decided not to register as pCM because that's too much trouble for them. Well, these are the factors to be considered by the CMB. As for the grace period, transitional period for 6 months, we have to consider each case on its own merit, so individual applicants have to apply individually. So after an application is received, we'll consider the merit of the case itself. And of course, CMB is an independent statutory body. So we'll reflect your views, but if you want to get more time, you have to submit an application. And we understand we need to do more publicity. You may have the impression that health preservation food is not regulated. Well, we don't have a dedicated ordinance on health preservation food, but they are subject to regulation under the undesirable medicine or medical advertisement ordinance, and also the nutrition labeling law. And the Center for Food Safety has a monitoring system and inspection system in respect of the labeling requirements. We would consider also the views expressed on the need to review the ordinance. Any supplement from the members here?
時間我講一講呢，我哋下一次嘅會議個安排。
Now we move on to the scheduling of future meetings. We've heard the deputations in the 2 public hearings. Next time we would like to continue with some extended discussion. I hope the Bureau can help us in preparing some papers. The next meeting will be held on the 13th of March, so the Bureau will get more than a month to get prepared. I hope on the aspects covered by the deputations, you can come up with a response, and that should cover issues such as GMP. Next time, we are going to look at the registration of pCM, testing, certification, GMP, and regulatory measures. We're going to have one more meeting. Let's hope that we can get some concrete response from the Bureau. And there have been some topics suggested by members of the subcommittee, for example, the professional training of CMPs. and the teaching and training and development of Chinese medicine practitioners, and the cooperation between Chinese and Western medicine in clinical services, and in Chinese medicine manufacturing. We have this topic on clinical tests, and that overlaps with the topic we have today, and also the alignment of Hong Kong's Chinese medicine system with that on the mainland. I've sent you a paper, members. That is with regard to the arrangement of 6 months of transition allowed. I would like to take this on in the list of topics to discuss. Is that agreed? Okay. AOB? If there's nothing under AOB, once again, I would like to thank deputations from the trade. Let's maintain the communication we have had so far. We understand this is a complicated subject. Although there's not much the Council can do, we'd like to at least make sure that the government hears you. The next meeting will be held on the 13th of March. We'll start at 10:45. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.